What if I took Power Grid: The First Sparks, a game that basically I've played and no one else I know has played, and kind of smashed in some of the stuff from this game that a lot of people are playing? What would that make? Maybe we'd end up with Dawn of Mankind. We're going to start up with setup, which is a little bit involved. So we're just going to spend a little time talking about it. The first thing we have to set up are these progress cards. And these progress cards have numbers on the back of them. So you just pull the cards out with the number of players you're playing with on their card backs, which makes that pretty nice. But the thing is, if you're playing a 5-player game, then all of a sudden we've got to take out all the cards, and then we have to do this. We have to stack them based on them all having the same. These are all the same card storytelling. But the cost goes up. So the first person to get there gets it cheaper. But we're going to set up stacks of cards like that. For this setup, I'm just going to set up a 2-player game just for the sake of this being easy and quick. And I will say this, 2-player games play really differently than full-player games. Now that that's set up, we're going to take a look at these tiles. These tiles, this is kind of a mini game almost. You have to find the way they fit. They're 2-sided tiles. You're just going to randomly put one side up on all of these. So just how I do, however, they just fall out of the bag. Just put that side up, kind of just randomize your setup. And they're going to match up with these different shapes. So these are all really kind of strangely shaped, but there's a match on the board. And it's, a little difficult to find the matches. Sometimes, like I'm having trouble right there. But most of the time, it's not too bad. So now that we've got these all set up, this is a setup for the game. It's ready to go as far as the board goes. We have these modular tiles that all went on there, randomized setup, and I can see where there can be expansion for this game by getting more sides to these, more tiles than just these 2-sided ones. So there could be another set of tiles that comes out or something that could make the game expanded again. Before we get any further into the game, I want to talk about some real quick concepts that we're going to keep referencing. These little areas inside of these little brackets, it looks like kind of like the brackets next to the tiles. Those are what they call like the rest areas. And so there's a really big one here. And that's where our people are going to be preparing to do the next phase of life, to do their work for the next phase of life. Over here is a newborn. Over here is death. We're going to the next great adventure, as it says in the playbook. So if your meeple is in a rest area, he can go to a tile and do what it says there, do the resource exchange or do the work that happens there. So as a person was young, they could play or they could develop a tool or they could do, whatever there. And then as they became a adolescent, as they became a teenager, they could do some more work for the tribe. And then as they become an adult and then finally an elder, they do different things at different seasons. Elders tend to have more of a focus on art and great works for the end of their life and creating points. The middle of the life phases here tend to do more reproduction and do more work to generate resources for our tribe. And then in the early stages, we're just doing some basic playing and developing a little bit of what's going on here at the beginning. So what that looks like, we'll get into now. So as we get ready to play this game, we have choices as a part of our setup. The setup's almost like a game in itself. You take 3 of your meeples out and you decide either I'm going to take this setup, I'm going to get priority choice on these setup cards, and these are pretty close. This one gives you one extra tool than the other one. So there's a little advantage to getting that setup, but you also, instead of taking one of these cards for setup, another choice you can have in reverse player order, is what we're doing this in, is put one of your people in the staging area, in the ready area here. So I'm going to play that guy flat there. These meeples are really neat. But they have this club on their back, which makes them a little bit back heavy. And so they tend to fall down like that a little bit sometimes. So I play with them flat like that. They work great like that. So you could keep doing that, and then the green player would take a turn, and he might put someone in this ready area. And then I might decide, I want to take this ready area here. And green might decide they want this to be in this ready area as well. Then finally I might take this setup card, and they might take the other setup card, and we put a third meeple out. And then we're ready to start the game. So Real quick, let's look at our game boards before we get into the main board here anymore. So these are our player boards. They're two-sided. We can use this side to help us get set up for the game. And this is going to track all of our resources, while this is going to just help us kind of understand what the icons do and how we're going to score points at the end of the game, etc. So the setup here I just talked about is pretty well laid out right there in a quick format version of it. Over here, we're going to actually keep track of our resources. So the setup that we picked had, I think, one meat, one food, two tools, and 2 hides, I think, is what we ended up with to start the game. So I'd put those on there to track them. And that's how I'm going to keep track of my resources. There's no tokens in this game, which to me is a really nice thing. I think, I don't know, keeping, 9, 8 tokens around, letting them set in front of you, having to count them out. The tracks thing works just better. And I think we're going towards that as a hobby, that we're using tracks instead of a ton of tokens. And I like that. And this game does that as well. So here's my resources. Now, I'm going to use these resources as I progress my people through this track. At the end of the game, though, like, we're going to score points here based on having these innovation cards, which I showed up there, which are going to give me like a slight player power. The number of players that I have out doing some work is going to, at the end of the game, give me some points. And then also I can exchange food and other things in for basically for points as well. So let's just show what a few turns would look like. If I'm the yellow player, I have a choice. Wherever these arrows go, I can go. So I have a lot of choices here. I could pretty well go anywhere in the bottom half of the board at the early stages here. But whenever I see one of these baby icons, I'm going to create a new life. So if I go here and I cross that baby icon, I'm going to put a new baby basically back in there. And the tribe has grown by 1 person by going there. Later on, when I show you towards the end of the game, into the lifespans, there's an art symbol, and we'll get into that in a second too. But that's going to create a child for me. And this is the barter square, which says this question mark means any resource, and then any resource. So I could exchange any resource for any resource at an even quantity. So that's kind of a powerful spot to get to. And then what might happen is, eventually the green player might go to play as well, because play can give you some points. That symbol means points. And they might want to get some growth too of their tribe. What's going to happen is, since I'm in this tile already, they're going to bump me out into the next ready area, which is really nice for me because now this guy's ready to do work again. And so that would really actually be kind of a discouragement for this guy to want to do that. So really, if he were a more shrewd player, he probably would have gone up here and then gone through that area to get his own growth and not really mess with that, because that bumping thing is really, it's a cost associated with taking a tile and really giving a good advantage to the player you bump out, because they get almost free work done. Because once you get all your people into their work areas and they sit on their tiles here, then you have to take a rest action. So once you have all your workers occupied doing their work, we have to rest. And then during rest, we have a chance to manipulate our resources a little bit into victory points by doing some cooking. But certain amounts of the food is going to spoil, so you can't stockpile too much food. That's indicated really easily on the playmat based on like the certain areas being shaded in versus not shaded in. But then when we rest, we're going to move everyone to the next ready area. And they're ready to do their next stage of life, their next set of work. And we're going to keep doing that. And we're going to keep gaining more people into our tribe that go back to the beginning and work them through this flow chart as we keep playing this game. And it really is just a cool flow chart that you're just working through. Now, the things that can change it include some of these progress cards and art. So let's get to that right now. So the study spot here, if I take that, I have this flame symbol show up. And what that flame symbol indicates is that something's happening there to give me progress in my tribe. So I have a choice to take one of the progress cards. So my progress cards were the cards that I sorted out by their backs at the beginning of the game. They're going to do different things for me. Let's just take a look at like a couple easy ones. Baskets are going to give me 2 extra fruit when I gather, whereas a needle is going to give me 2 extra hides when I hunt. So if I went to that study action, I would get to take one of those. And I would probably want to take, these hides are really valuable. They can get me a lot of points. So I'm going to take that one. Now whenever I hunt, I get extra hides because I've got needles, and I've developed that in my civilization, my tribe. One part of setup I didn't cover were the like great works of art cards, which we put out as well. And these get like little cubes put on there to track where we're at with the progression of art in the game. And they basically have a little table on there that says if you pay a certain number of resources, you get a certain number of victory points back. And this is a huge way to get victory points. So let's take a look at the end of life stuff where the art is going to happen, but also where you're going to leave a legacy and leave your tribe with some victory points. So here is the end of life stage where we're going to become elders. We go from being an adult, we take a rest action, we become ready. And then we go in here and we become, let's say I'm going to become a shaman. I'm going to pay those resources and then get 5 victory points because of becoming a shaman. And as I went to become a shaman, I passed one of these art symbols here, which means I'm allowed to participate in taking an art action. So when I take an art action, it basically looks like this. To make this art, I would pay 2 bear skins and then get 7 victory points back in return. And then I would move this cube down to show that I did that. And that's no longer available now. So the next person's going to be able to pay 4 and get 12 victory points. So that's a really huge way to get victory points. You really want to try and set your people up to be able to do art as they get to that end of life era. So throughout the game, we're getting victory points, and we kind of keep those secret, and we keep getting victory points, and we keep them flipped over in secret, but over time, I'm eventually going to get 60 victory points. And once I get 60 victory points, I declare, hey, I just broke 60 on my turn. The game stops. The game's over. Basically, then we're going to figure out the in-game scoring. So just because you got 60 points first doesn't mean you won. It's a good indication you might win, but there's also a lot of other ways to score points. So our resources that we have on our player board are going to convert into points. We're going to have our players on the map still convert into points. Our progress cards we got are going to convert into points. So really a pretty simple game, pretty light game. We're just working through these flowcharts, basically trying to get resources converted and manipulated. I think it's a nice little game. The box size on it is pretty compact. So this is the kind of game that you can throw in your backpack and play. I'll give you some more thoughts on it now when we get back to the studio. Dawn of Mankind, I'm going to go ahead and just say this. One, that rules explanation, it's like, I think I got the rules explained, but when you play the game, it feels different than just having the rules explained to you. So I would say try and find a way to play the game. The other thing too is it plays at 2 and it plays at 5 super differently. Very crowded board. You're getting bumped all the time at 5 players. At 2 players, it's wide open. You get to do what you think is just best for you and not worry about bumping the other player out because it's going to happen so infrequently. It doesn't matter near as much. So, but get a chance to play it, and that'll give you a better feel for the game. I'm going to go ahead and just break it down right now and tell you what I think is good about this game and what I think maybe suffers a little in this game. And I'm going to start with the weaknesses because there's just a couple that stick out to me right off the top of my head. One, the setup in this game is a pain. And for as short a game as it is, it's a pain. But that said, it's the design of the game. The setup is really hard. And the only way I can think that they can make it easier is if they just had pre-printed board that was 2-sided. But then you're not going to get the variable setup, and the replayability in this game is going to suck. So I think they went with a happy medium. The setup's a little difficult. It's not terrible. And they minimize it as much as they could. So I'm thinking if they just had tiles with different backs on them, and you had to put them in different spots or something, that would have really been a pain. So doing the 2-sided different shaped tiles was really clever, and I think the smartest way to do it. So they minimized the tough setup in this game as best they could with the just way they did it. It was the best way you could do it. So I'm happy with how they minimized the clunky setup, but it is still a little bit clunky. The progress cards too are a little bit clunky, having to count them up by player count, then picking 5 sets, stacking them up the way they are. That's a little bit clunky. I don't know how you can minimize that any better either. And it's really easy to pick out the card sets because they have the player number right on the back, and it's big and easy to find. So the design of this game has a little bit of clunky setup in it. I think that the manufacturing of the game and the design of the final product did what they could to minimize that. So I think at one point this probably was a prototype that was like a nightmare to set up, and they did some stuff to really streamline that setup, and I acknowledge that. Setup's still a little bit of a pain, but they've done a ton to make it better. And it's just inherent with the game, and I don't know how I could do it any better. I'm just acknowledging it, saying it is a thing. Those little caveman meeples are super adorable and super fun and way better than just playing with regular meeples, and I will take them over regular meeples every day, but they are back heavy and they fall down. So you have to lay them flat, and that's okay. I don't mind that either. Because they're fun and they're different and they make you feel like you're playing as a caveman. So I do dig that. Those are the 2 things I'm going to complain about with this game. Now I'm going to get into my whole list of things that are strong about this game. One, the theme is, everybody will enjoy this theme and not mind it. There's certain games that you can't play because the theme is prohibitive to certain players to play them. This one, I can't imagine someone being like, oh, I don't want to play as a caveman trying to get fish. There probably is somebody out there. I don't know them. The weight of this game is really a strong point. This is a game that's going to shine with any kind of group that you're playing with. This can be played with family, and it's going to take a little bit of explanation, a little bit of like how to understand the symbols in this game, but generally it's pretty easy and accessible. This with gamers is going to be a fun type filler kind of game a little bit. It's going to be something that you might play that's a little lighter at the end of the night, or play something while people are arriving because it's not long. But it's a fun, different game. It feels unique from everything else. And the only reason why in the beginning I talked about Tapestry and the First Sparks feels a little closer to it than Tapestry for sure, because the abstracted tracks thing is the only thing that I'm taking away from the Tapestry stuff. And like the abstracted civ building kind of thing, that's present in this, but other than that, it has nothing in common with Tapestry. And then First Sparks, like the theme is definitely really similar, and the ideas of like doing work with your tribe. But this is like, almost feels like Tiny Epic Power Grid, the First Sparks, if that makes sense. So at any rate, where was I even at? I don't know. The gameplay though is right for like a lot of game groups, and it's going to hit the table a lot, because anywhere between family members who aren't gamers all the way up to game groups, there'll be accessibility for this game to hit the table. So that's really strong too. The components in this game are overall very strong, and I talked about why they are. It's because I think that those shaped tiles, putting them down, makes that setup so streamlined and minimized compared to what it could be. It's still, like I said, a thing, but it's so much less than it could be. And so the components are really strong. The player boards are really thin, but we're seeing that now. Like, people are just going to thin player boards. It's just because they sit on the table and we don't handle them, and it's okay. It's something that we're gonna have to get used to. We first saw it really in Terraforming Mars, but why do we need big thick player boards to sit on a table? I can't think of a reason. Maybe to keep them from warping or something, or they don't get bumped as easy. That could be all I could think of. This one's got thin, kind of like Terraforming Mars player boards, but it's a cost savings for the company, makes this game affordable for us to buy. And I'm not handling that board. I'm moving things on it a little bit. Not a big deal. I'm not worried about it. So the components overall are very strong. I'm going to give the components in this game a 4 out of 5. That caveman falling over backwards is a little goofy. And there's nothing in there that goes, oh, wow, this really wows me. So the symbols in it are clear to understand. The design's good. 4 out of 5, which is really strong. That's a really strong number. The fun factor in this game, every time I played it, I've said, let's set it up and play it again, or was ready to, if other people would do it. So I think it's a fun game. I think I enjoy it. It feels like it's a puzzle you're solving a little bit. You're trying to figure out how to convert this stuff into this stuff. That's the whole game. Making decisions based on which of these, out of these situations I have, is the best thing for me to do in what order. It's fun. It's a fun little puzzle. Really enjoy it. And it's really interactive, especially at higher player counts, where you're bumping each other out and trying to predict what other people are going to do, so you can get bumped out and take that advantage for yourself. That's a fun thing as well. It plays just really neat at higher player counts, because that bumping thing really does, it becomes a thing for sure. And then, like, I think a home rule that I'm going to try and see if I can make work, it will probably break the game, but I'm going to play it this way one time and see what happens. At 2 players, what if you could bump yourself out? That might be kind of cool, right? So I might try that one time. It'll definitely break the game, but it might be fun to play it once that way. So at any rate, that bumping mechanism and how we're going to try and develop stuff and move forward with our civilization, really fun. 4.5 out of 5. The final thing is the replayability on this game. This game, if you would have just had a 2-sided printed board that had just the icons printed on it, and you had a game A and a game B, and then you had a few sets of cards for art and a few sets of cards for progress cards, it's going to be like a 3 out of 5. Like, it gets pretty similar. You're doing the same thing over and over again, cycling through this thing, cycling through it. So a 3 out of 5 base, but then we add on top of it, we do have those art cards that do change things up a little bit every time. So maybe we're up to 3.5. We have those progress cards that are different every time. Maybe that gets us up to a 3.5 strongly. And then the fact that our tiles are 2-sided and we're putting those out randomly, and it does change the game up, the layout of the game. Like, I think you probably could play this game uniquely. I don't know, a million times. I don't know. The math on it, I couldn't tell you exactly. It'd be like, I don't know, 2 to the, I don't know, like 20th power, whatever that would end up being, because there's, I don't know, probabilities are hard. But anyway, you can play it a bunch of different ways. There's a bunch of unique setups in this game. The 2 sides of the tiles on them, some of them actually match. Some of them are very, very close. So it's like, this is a hunting tile, the other side's a hunting tile. This side gives you, a little more meat, and this one gives you, and it costs you a tool, whereas this one just gives you meat and no hides, that kind of thing. That whole like setup, it's not like the tiles are dramatically different and change the mechanics of the game much, but it does keep things a little bit fresh. So those tiles put it up to a 4 out of 5. So in recapping, theme's great for everybody. The gameplay weight is a really strong gameplay weight for everybody. The ratings on this, I'm going to go ahead and give the components and art and design of this a 4. I'm going to give the fun factor a 4.5 because it is a fun game, and the replayability a 4. So where does that land with my overall rating? I'm going to land this guy at a strong 4 out of 5. And 4 out of 5 is a good rating. It's a very good rating. And so that makes it a board game mechanics accepted game. That means that I think 80% of the people who would potentially play this game or would be around this game or watch this review would enjoy that game, is my prediction. I really do think about 80% of people out there are going to enjoy playing this game. And that's pretty broad appeal. And that's pretty broadly a good game. So if you have a chance to play it, I would say definitely play it if you get a chance to do a demo or do something with it. Give it a shot. It's a neat little game. And I don't know what the price point on this is going to be exactly, but I would guess it's fairly inexpensive compared to bigger box games. So it might be worth even the blind buy if you looked at it and go, oh, that looks cool. I think that's for me. I'm happy to have it. I'm happy to have it in my collection, and it's not going anywhere for a while because I think there's a lot of ways I could play this game and with a lot of different people. So I'm going to enjoy it for a while, and I think you will too. So 4 out of 5, board game mechanics accepted. I've been Joel with the board game mechanics. My mouth is stopping working right now for whatever reason. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and say keep gaming. But this has been Dawn of Mankind, a really strong game.